get ready for the doom and gloom today. When we talk about the Antichrist, there are many people down through the ages who have tried to identify the Antichrist and who he is. Way back, some thought that Judas was the Antichrist because he was, betraying the Lord and everything. Some thought Nero was perhaps the Antichrist. And then, the Pope. Some thought the Pope would be the Antichrist. We come down a little closer to our time, and there were many thought, well, Hitler must be the Antichrist, or Mussolini, And then maybe it was Kennedy or Kissinger. And I'm sure people today are ready to name somebody else. Today,
I think both of our presidential candidates were labeled with that by various groups.
Yes,
at different times. So
I was just going to say that. I was gonna name names.
Yep, were you? Sorry, I preempted you.
Well, we're going to look at what the Bible says about his nature, his character, what kind of a person he was, what kind of a, shall we say, government that he had around him. With two beasts from verse 1, one from the earth and one from the sea. And first of all, let's take a look at the beast from the sea, that came up out of the sea. In verse 1, in the version that I have here, it says, "Then I stood." Some versions will use "he." It doesn't matter much which way they translate it. It does not change the interpretation of the entire chapter anyhow. Up out of the sea. Many times it's mentioned the sea. The sea is a large group of people. In this case, it's the large group of Gentile people, a sea of Gentile humanity. And that's what we're talking about. The beast, first of all, they call him a beast. And because he's a beast, it indicates that he is ferocious, like a beast. That's his nature. And that puts him in a league with Satan himself.
That's true. In Daniel chapter 7, it talks about the four beasts coming up out of the sea, the humanity like that. Those beasts were, you had Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece. Were they satanic?
We're going to get to that on the next page.
Okay.
This beast is a man raised up by Satan, and he had 7 heads and 10 horns. The 7 world empires of the past, starting with just what he said, the Babylonian Empire, then the Medo-Persian Empire, and then the Grecian Empire, and the Roman Empire, and so on. Then, chapter 17, 10 to 12. Let's look at that. Chapter 17 in the book of Revelation here, and verses 10, 11, and 12. Okay, someone read that for me.
They were also 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, the other has not yet come. But when he does come, he must remain for only a little while. The beast who once was, and now is not, is the 8th king. He belongs to the seven and is going to his destruction. One
Okay.
more? Was it verse 12?
Let's go to the 10 horns, or 10 kings, which make up the confederacy of the revised Roman Empire. So, theologians, many, even some, most today, I don't know if it's most or some or what, but today they believe that the Roman Empire will be revived, and that's what we're talking about here. Now, I formally taught that all the time, but I have begun to have another option, shall we say, for this revised empire. When we look at the map, and let's do that, if we look at the map, here is Israel, okay? Turkey is a Muslim nation. We keep going around, of course you know Iran and what there, but here is Syria, right next to Israel. There is Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, Jordan touches Israel. Down here is Egypt and Sudan, and over from Egypt would be Libya, okay.
Algeria.
Some of you know your geography.
Morocco was over there somewhere too.
Yeah. Well, now, if we look at these Muslim nations surrounding Israel, is it more likely, I ask the question, is it more likely that the 10-nation confederacy that's going to try and wipe Israel out are these nations here, or is it, as some theologians interpret this, to say that up in Europe there will be a leader come out of Europe, and the 10 nations in Europe, maybe even the 10 that we're talking about now that have united, or there's 12 and one dropped out or something
27,
like
I
that.
thought.
But that's what has been taught, and I am just giving you another option, that here we have 10 nations that are surrounding Israel, and could that be the 10-nation confederacy that we're talking about here in this section? We're going to get to that more and more, and when we're done with this book and get into Daniel, we'll see that more clearly even. It seems odd that we would go to way back to Daniel in the Old Testament to see more clearly what we're talking about in the New Testament. So, if we would look at Daniel chapter 7, verses 3 to 8, we would see there what he was talking about, the lion, and this statue that we're going to see a statue a little later on. But the lion in Daniel and the lion here in the book of Revelation are the same. The lion is like Nebuchadnezzar and Babylon. The bear would then be Medo-Persia. It indicates strength and stability, the tenacity, the ability to crush its prey at will. That's a bear. That would be the Medo-Persian Empire. The leopard is a symbol of the Grecian Empire under Alexander the Great. Okay. And he came in and took over and swiftly conquered the Middle East. So, this beast will be a pawn in the hands of Satan with great power, with a lot of authority, more than any of the previous empires. The head, as though it were wounded to death, we're in verse 3, was wounded and then healed. Now, some believe that he was killed and then raised. Well, Satan, as near as I can tell, Satan cannot raise the dead. I don't see where he ever did. Christ or some of his followers have raised the dead, but I think we're looking here at a point where he was near death, but he was not dead. Satan cannot raise the dead. But there's many theories about this too. Perhaps it was, and or will be, I talk about was, we're looking at the future of history, or history, I don't know, how do you say that? But it hasn't happened yet, but we're talking about as if it did or is happening. Anyhow, there are many theories about this beast. Maybe he was assassinated, or attempted assassination empire, and that's like the Roman Empire that never died. It keeps on keeping on. Verse 3 refers to the empire being healed and not its leader. Either way, it doesn't matter. This will cause worldwide amazement. The ungodly will worship the dragon or Satan and the beast, the Antichrist. And let's turn to 2 Thessalonians. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verses 9 to 12. And somebody read that for us.
The coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with the work of Satan displayed in all kinds of counterfeit miracles, signs, and wonders, and in every sort of evil that deceives those who are perishing. They perish because they refuse to love the truth and so be saved. For this reason, God sends them a powerful delusion so that they will believe the lie, and so that all will be condemned who have not believed the truth, but have delighted in wickedness.
So Satan is sending here a powerful delusion. Okay. The people will be completely involved in Satan worship. Okay? Satan, hey, get this. Satan will finally, after 6,000 years of history, realize that part of his long-sought desire to rule the world and to receive worldwide worship will finally happen. This will, Satan will have power, he will have wisdom, he will have leadership, and he will have military might to carry out his wishes and to rule the world. No. Verse 4, who is like the beast? The expected answer is no. No one. The beast will seem invincible. Okay? Who is able to make war with him or against him? Again, the answer would be no one. No one can do that. Satan will give him the necessary authority to become a world conqueror. You see what's happening here? This beast, under the control of Satan, of course, will have the authority It's almost unimaginable to rule the entire world. That's a big thing. But behind it all, when we see what Satan is doing, God alone has the power to destroy him. As we look at what Satan is doing and such terrible things, but we can see where God is in control. God has the final say. Satan is doing this for how long? Well, God tells it it's 7 years or 3.5 years of really bad stuff. And God limits the time, so God is in control. At the end of this time, God will say, this is enough. I'm coming back to earth. We'll get to that too. Dictators usually are very persuasive in their speech. They can make eloquent speeches and convince the masses that he is the one, the emperor, and he will get to the place where even they claim to be God himself.
You watch Hitler's speeches, and some of you grew up in that era where you may have, of course we didn't have live TV of that stuff back then, but he's a very persuasive speaker.
And the people followed him.
Yes, he's very charismatic, and he was haranguing the crowds.
That's why some people thought that he would be the Antichrist. But yes, that's a good example. Dictators are usually very persuasive speakers, able to motivate the masses, and this Antichrist was no exception. Yeah. He'll be able to mesmerize the nations with his inspiring speeches. This power of the Antichrist is limited. And in all of these terrible things, we need to remember that behind it all, God is in control. If we go to Daniel, I think it's chapter 4, where Nebuchadnezzar claims that Daniel is serving the Most High God. It is Daniel's God that sets up nations, tears down nations. He is in complete control. God is in, when we see things happening around us today, and they're bad, and what can be the solution? There is no answer. But we must always remember God is in control. When the election passes, whether you like it or not, God is in control. He sets up nations. Then why should I vote? Well, I think if you're a patriotic person, you need to vote. And I was going to say help God. You don't help God. But God raises up the leaders. God raises up the nations. So God is in complete control. He has the power over Satan, and he can destroy him when he will. And he will. Okay. And in this case, this beast is limited to 42 months. How long is 42 months?
3.5 years.
3.5 years. And it also speaks of 1,260 days. How long is that? 3.5 years. Okay. But this beast, he is, well, he's a pawn of Satan, of course, but he'll blaspheme God. He'll blaspheme God's name. He will blaspheme his dwelling place, his tabernacle, where God lives. He will blaspheme those even in heaven, the saints who are with God. He will curse them. Antichrist will be given power to make war with the saints and even overcome them. God is allowing the saints to be overcome in many cases. And we wonder today, why? Why does God allow ISIS to behead people, Christians that they meet? God is allowing that, but only for so long, only for so much. It speaks, and we'll see that later on in the book, about the saints who were beheaded for their Lord. And there's a special place for them in heaven. So, if you're beheaded, praise the Lord. You have a special place. Those who worship the beast at that time will not have their names written in the book of life, in the Lamb's book of life, who was slain from the foundation of the world. He wasn't slain 2,000 years ago, as we proclaim at Easter time. He died effectively before the world was created. God, in his foreknowledge, knew what was going to happen when he created the earth. He knew that men would sin. He knew all of these things. And the plan before the foundation of the world was that his Son agreed to come here to earth in the form of a human being and die a horrible death on the cross. And then God says, his blood that was shed on the cross can be a propitiation for the sins of the whole world. That's an amazing thing. But again, it shows us that God was in control of all things. Even before he created the world, he knew what was going to happen. And he made arrangements for that. Why did he do this? I think God wanted people in heaven to love him. Now, an angel would automatically love and obey the God, but God wanted someone that really knew what love was. Now, when you are forgiven, all of those terrible things that you've done, and then you are taken into God because he loved you. It puts a certain love in your heart for God. A kind of, it's hard to explain, but it's a kind of love that God wanted, that God desired. He wanted human beings to love him. And so he allowed them to sin and then forgave them as they came to him. He knows the end from the beginning. And so, again, he's in control of all things. a question comes up about this Antichrist. Will the church ever know who this Antichrist is? What do you think?
Some will.
Some will.
Well, if you believe in the rapture, and when it occurs early, actually it should happen before the Antichrist is on the scene. So they won't really know.
So the church won't know.
Right.
But there are going to be a lot of Christians in this world after the... Well, I personally don't believe in the pre-trib rapture, but even if you do believe in it, there are going to be some Christians after that.
There'll be the 144,000 and those that are converted by the 144,000.
But that's still going to be the church.
As well, yes, there'll be what we call tribulation saints.
But they're still going to be the
That are
church.
born during the tribulation.
God has done a lot of preparing us for, a time, telling us to be ready, and if we're not going to be here, what's all the warning about?
It's not a warning. It's partly a revelation, letting us folks know what will happen, that God will finally get his time and be able to take care of things here on earth. Yes, there will be some that will be here during that time, and we'll talk about that a little later in the book when we see these folks again around God's throne.
Probably thinking of this in too literal a term, and maybe more as a verb instead of a noun. When I think of Antichrist, if we are not for Christ, if we don't believe, if we don't have ourselves there, are we in fact Antichrist ourselves?
That's true.
It's a very sobering thought to put it in those terms. We talked about that in men's breakfast group. I didn't come up with that idea, but a group of us did. Kind of.
Well,
it's just perspective to think about it.
yes. When we look at these nations all around, we can see that as a 10-nation confederation, and we can also see it, as John says, there's different ways to look at it. How is God working in these nations to be the 10-nation confederation, or is it something else going on here that we don't know or don't understand? But I am beginning to believe more that this is not only a confederacy of nations around Israel that'll be ready to wipe them into the sea or push them in or whatever they're going to do, which will be a futile attempt anyway. But there are many different interpretations of this, and I am just giving you the right one.
All right. Good. We came to the right class.
It's like one of my professors said one time, I will give you the privilege of being wrong. So, there we are. Again, we did not read together those first 10 verses. So let's start, John, with verse 11 and go on through 18.
The beast out of the earth. Then I saw another beast coming out of the earth. He had 2 horns like a lamb, but he spoke like a dragon. He exercised all the authority of the first beast on his behalf, and made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose fatal wound had been healed. And he performed great and miraculous signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven to earth in full view of men. Because of the signs he was given power to do on behalf of the first beast, he deceived the inhabitants of the earth. He ordered them to set up an image in honor of the beast who was wounded by the sword and yet lived. He was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast, so that it could speak and cause all who refused to worship the image to be killed. He also forced everyone, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on his right hand or on his forehead, so that no one could buy or sell unless he had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of his name. This calls for wisdom. If anyone has insight, let him calculate the number of the beast, for it is man's number. His number is 666.
The second beast, he seems to be promoting the first beast. So he's seems like a little lower on the totem pole. And the first beast is promoting the Antichrist himself. Okay? Jesus predicted many false Christs and prophets would be around in the last days. Here and there and everywhere. I am the one. And we see that today. Name them. Name one.
David Koresh.
Who?
David Koresh.
Yes.
Muhammad.
Muhammad.
Jones. What was it?
The Jones.
Jim Jones?
Yeah, that's the one that came to my mind first.
Charles Manson?
Yes, another one.
He's used something I get millions of followers, just walking around now claiming to be Jesus. I can't remember what his last name, what he's going by.
So they're rising up
But
everywhere.
that's not many. We just named a handful of them.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh yes.
Yeah.
Name some more if there's a lot more.
Some of the guys in India that can actually hover above the ground and produce fruit and things.
But are they a false Christ?
They are, people follow them like they would die for this person.
It's a false religion, but it's not a false Christ.
Well, they're following that person.
Yes,
Well, these two beasts in chapter 13 are the final unveiling of Jesus' prophecy that's taking place in the book of Revelation, and especially in chapter 24 of Matthew, Jesus is speaking there of all of these things that will happen prior to his return again. And these things are taking place in the tribulation. The main thing here is we have the two beasts, and the world political leader is identified as the Antichrist. The second beast is a religious leader identified as the false prophet. Okay? It's another of the same kind and the same nature as the first beast. Same kind of nature, same kind of character, same kind of everything. He has the same power, the same ferocious character. There are three phrases in chapter 11, or in this chapter, to describe number 1, it says, up out of the earth. Up out of the earth. Does that make you think of anything up out of the earth? That would be, is that Satan or is that Christ?
Seems like man to me.
What's that?
Seems like man to me, or like a human, because out of the earth, the dust, and it also talks later about giving breath as well.
It's not like anything heavenly. No. Okay. And up out of the earth, and he will promote the program of Satan. Okay. 2 horns like a lamb. It's a counterfeit of Christ as the lamb. A counterfeit. This guy is a wolf in sheep's clothing. He is there to convince the people of something that is anti-God. Okay? He speaks like a dragon, subtle, seductive, satanic, to lead people away from their belief in Christ. And not away from Christ, but into the worship of the Antichrist. Now this guy has got to be very powerful, these 2 beasts, and especially this one that we're talking about now, if they are able to convince not a nation or not one group of people, but this thing is going to be worldwide. And for one person, the second beast, to be able to do that, and he is in turn promoting the Antichrist himself. He is subservient to Antichrist. He is leading people to worship Antichrist. Satan himself will infuse the second beast with the same authority as he gave to the first beast. 8 times in verses 12 to 18 here, it mentions to do, to cause, to make, all of these things. That indicates the power that the second beast has. The second beast will consolidate worldwide, everything, but more importantly, he will consolidate worldwide religion. There will be one worldwide religion worshiping the Antichrist. He will control the economy. He will control commerce all around the world. Well, if he has everybody worshiping him, that would almost allow him to, but not almost, but really, he will be able to consolidate and control the economy, the commerce, all these things under his control. Notice the chain of command here. The first beast promotes Satan's desire for world domination and worship. The second beast promotes the first beast's desire for the same thing. And he does it by great wonders. In verse 13, he can do great things. Now, turn to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Verses 9 to 11. Chapter 2, verses 9, 10, and 11. Go ahead, read it.
The coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with the work of Satan, displayed in all kinds of counterfeit miracles, signs, and wonders, and in every sort of evil that deceives those who are perishing. They perish because they refuse to love the truth and to be saved. For this reason, God sends them a powerful delusion so that they will not believe the lie.
A strong delusion again. This beast is, hey, while you're there,
It's God that sends them the strong delusion.
read verse 4.
He opposes and exalts himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, and even sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God.
If we look at these things that we've been talking about, we realize that none of this is really new. God has done all of these things, these miracles and whatever, changing water to blood. We go back to the Egyptians and all the way through the Old Testament and the New, we find that all of these things have happened before, most times in a smaller way. But now God is about to do it in a big way. Or sometimes God does it, and sometimes we read He allows it. So He allowing Satan to go so far, but this is the end, and then I will show you a bigger thing, just like He did with the Egyptians when Moses went down to set the people free, take them out of bondage in the land of Egypt, and the Egyptians were even able to do some things. But God said, this is enough now. I'm going to show you a greater thing, and then you will let my people go. And when death came, and the Egyptians couldn't do that, they could do a lot of things, but they couldn't bring about death like they did there in Egypt. And so here again, God is saying to Satan, well, you can go so far, but that is the end. Now, if we would write on the chalkboard, if we would put over here the Antichrist, and then under the Antichrist we would have the first beast and the second beast. Now compare that to over here, we would write God the Father, Christ the Son, and the Holy Spirit. It is a counterfeit. And that's what Satan has been up to all along, in all of his attempts to destroy the Jewish nation, and especially the Messiah of the Jewish nation. He would try to annihilate the whole crew, everything. Okay. Moving on. The false prophet will have supernatural power from Satan as a miracle worker. Miracles like the Egyptians that we just talked about. And how about in the New Testament? Can you think of a miracle worker that was not for Christ? Begins with an S.
Simon.
Simon the sorcerer. Yeah. And in the book of Acts. And he did things under the power of Satan, but he wanted the power of Christ to be able to do the things that Christ did. So but the false prophet will have some supernatural powers, miracles like the Egyptians and so on. But again, we want to make sure and let you know that Satan has limited power. Just like Simon, he had power to do these things, but he wanted more power. He knew there was more power. He wanted it in the wrong way, though. Satan has limited power only as God allows. Okay? But the power of this false prophet will be so convincing that he deceiveth them that dwell on the earth, the unbelievers that are here on the earth. He's able to deceive them, bring them under his power. So then the world is completely captivated by his miraculous power and signs and wonders. Let's look at Matthew 24:24, and these are the words of Jesus himself. If you have a red letter Bible, they would be in red. But anyhow, Matthew 24, verse 24. Read it for me.
For false Christs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and miracles to deceive even the elect, if that were possible.
I was just thinking of that too. I'm trying to remember where that was.
If that were possible. So, if the Spirit of God is in us, we are in tune with him, and we will not be deceived. We would be the tribulation saints then. But God is still in control. That's the main message that we're trying to get across here. The beast then, verse 14, is both ruler and it is an empire. Some interpret this as a man, some interpret this as an empire. And I think maybe it is both. Just like when we think of Nebuchadnezzar is the same as Babylon, the entire empire, and so on. So it is with this guy here. He's both the ruler and it is the empire that he is ruling over. Anyhow, he was wounded and then revived. He died and then he lived. The image is the center of false worship, the final state of apostasy, the pinnacle of idolatry, when everybody is worshiping. The image will demand death to all who refuse to worship him.
Can that happen here in America? I believe it's going to happen, but I'm asking, can it happen? If they try to pass religious laws like this, aren't a lot of people going to be totally up in arms over it?
Well, it is happening, especially where ISIS controls. You know, and you've seen pictures.
Right.
Now, here in America, we hear stories. I haven't seen it myself, but there have been stories on the TV and other places where a Muslim father would kill his own children because they wanted to depart Muslim and be Christian. And that, in several cases, is happening now in America, but on a very small scale. And
They have there's Sunday laws already written, they're just not enforced. As far as like enforcing a 1 day set aside for one religion, and it seems to me, what I've noticed, you see like the bumper stickers, that coexist.
Yes.
They have all the religions all as one. And the Pope now is going worldwide, trying, accepting all, like what's they call it, the year of, I can't remember when, but it's like forgiveness for everybody, for and come on in, bring everybody in. It just seems like it's been a while, but it seems like there's a push. Okay, let's just put our differences aside and all come together as one. And, obviously the Bible, there's no room for that in the Bible, but it seems to be what's going on worldwide.
I am older than you are, but I can remember when Sunday laws were Sunday laws and we kept them, and the stores were not open, and all of these things. And
they're still like that in the South in some places, I know.
Well, maybe some places, but mostly it's the malls and the big box stores and stuff. They're all
car sales, motorcycles, and some places down south you can't. There's no alcohol sold on Sundays.
the blue laws.
It's interesting because in Egypt, of course, Friday is the holy day. And so Mark's family had Friday and Sabbath off and work on Sunday and go to school on Sunday. So they worship on Sabbath. That's when their church meets.
When their church meets, but do all churches meet on that day?
Probably because they wouldn't be able to meet on Sunday.
No, but on Friday. Would they worship on Friday?
They might, yeah. Whenever they do it.
Mhm.
Do they worship on Saturday because it's the Sabbath of the Bible, or for another reason?
Well, yeah, for a lot of people it's for another reason.
So it's the Friday holy day. Is that a Muslim piece?
It's
or?
Friday's a Muslim holy day.
So do people today worship on Sunday because it is biblical, or because it's a thing to do? I can meet the right people on the social ladder. I can be political. There are many reasons for
The whole society now seems to be set up around it, the way our weekends is. It's to do Sabbath worship and everything that goes, like for having kids, everything that goes on for school is on Saturday. Everything seems to be set up around to make it difficult.
And that changed again in my lifetime.
Yeah.
My son, when he first went to high school, football games were always on another day, not on Saturday. And then gradually it came to be, by the time he was a senior in high school, he could only play a couple of games because they moved it to Saturday, Sabbath. So anyhow, the world is changing, and it's changing fast. And this false prophet, he's going to organize the world with the mark of the beast. Doesn't matter who you are, rich or poor, small or great, free or whatever, he's going to do that. And so, just as the 144,000 Jewish believers were sealed with God's protection, those who worship the beast will receive an identifying mark. And the beast will regulate the economy, the commerce worldwide, the computers, and survival is just about impossible without this mark of the beast. Numbers or letters, it's the same as the mark. Some people, they try to add up the numbers of 666 and try to make it this or that or something else. But they can never come up with any positive results that this is the mark of the beast or whatever. If the church is in heaven, it won't know and it won't matter. God revealed to John a satanic system that will control the world during the tribulation period. People today wonder about this mark of the beast. Do you have the mark? Will you get the mark of the beast? Well, if you are part of the church, and the church has been raptured, you don't need to worry about this then. It's going to happen after you're gone. But the Christians that are here have to consider, do I want the mark of the beast, or can I say no to that? The seeds of this movement are being sown today and could blossom in the very near future. When you think about it, with the computer systems that we have today and the electronics that I am lost in, I can't figure it out, not one bit. But with these things, they can easily do a mark of the beast or whatever. But God's ahead of them. What did he do to these 144,000? He gave them a mark.
The seal of the living God.
He sealed them, that's what the word. He sealed them so that Satan could not touch him, or wasn't allowed to touch them. But Satan is coming along, and he will have the similar mark. Matthew 24:4, take heed that no man deceive you. Now, if all of this is for the tribulation, does that apply to us today? Take heed that no man deceive you.
Yes.
Well, we just talked about all of these false Christs. Take heed that no man deceive you. Be sure that you are serving the one and only God, the Jesus Christ himself. Beware of the time so that you will not be led into deception. We must take this warning seriously and teach others to do likewise. Questions? Answers?
I just have a comment. I was looking in my study Bible about the mark of the beast, and one of the explanations is 7 is a perfect number, and so 666, they're all imperfect. So that's one explanation that they gave.
So what does that mean for me?
I'm not sure. I'm asking you the question.
Well, does the Bible tell you the answer? Shake your head no.
The mark of the beast, I find it interesting where it says it's going to be in the hand or the forehead, and the right hand is normally your action, and your head is your thoughts. So the mark of the beast, where I'm at now, where I've been in many different places, but where I'm at now is just going to be your actions, your thoughts, and where you're at is the actual mark, not a chip or a tattoo or
What's happened internally in your head.
Where you are, and God can, any like the seal that God's putting on, God can read the seal and God can read the mark, right? I mean, and if your right hand and your head, are or the beast, if you take the Antichrist and are following the Antichrist, and you have the mark. But I don't necessarily, where I'm at now, I don't believe it's going to be some chip or tattoo or.
Like they said, they can't buy anything unless you have this mark. How are they going to see it if it's not visible?
It's going to be a one world. The way where I'm at now is if it's a one world government, a one world political system, all the stores are going to be, you're going to participate or you're not. Like if all the stores are run by the beast because it's all one political system, all one empire, they're all of the beast. So either you participate or you don't. You go to Walmart or whatever store and buy your food, or you don't. I mean, somewhere you'd be supporting the beast and the beast system if it is how, like I'm saying.
It's like your credit card that you use today. There will be some kind of an identification like a credit card or invisible thing that we can't see. But Satan will have it all worked out, and if you don't go along, it's off with your head. It's that simple. And so that will be the dilemma that Christians in that day will face. Either take the mark of the beast, which will eventually send you to hell, or go for God's mark and off with your head. But when that happens, you're instantly in a better place anyhow.
When we talk about the beast that comes up out of the sea, in Daniel chapter 7, each beast was a nation or a kingdom.
Right?
So if we use that same interpretation in chapter 13, as the beast coming up out of the sea, wouldn't it also have to be a kingdom or a nation or an empire instead of just an individual?
It is like those. So this beast will be like all of those put together. The bear, the lion, and then the bear, and then the leopard, and so on. This beast will